Thank you, Giselle, for the lovely presentation on how DICE can help you. Good afternoon, everyone. Today I plan to speak to you about CDRH's Medical Device Development Tools program. Within the course of this presentation, I'll share with you information on what the MDDT program is and what is considered an MDDT or Medical Device Development Tool. I'll then briefly describe the MDDT submission process to qualify a tool and describe the role of MDDTs in regulatory review when they're used to support medical device pre-market applications. So let's start with the MDDT program itself. Before discussing the MDDT program, I want to highlight the two purposes of this presentation. First, the MDDT program is a qualification pathway for tools that can be used to assess medical devices. So when considering your product, you can consider whether the product can be used to support development of another device. For example, could your product help collect information for a clinical trial or standardize a performance assessment for a medical device? Secondly, as I walk through the qualification process, you will see the rigor with which we review tools for qualification. These tools are intended to be used by medical device manufacturers to support their marketing application. So as you listen to this presentation and explore the types of tools that have been qualified, strongly consider if these would be valuable in helping demonstrate safety, effectiveness, or performance for your device. Okay, so let's talk about the MDDT program. As I mentioned before, the Medical Device Development Tools program is a voluntary program and CDRH's pathway for qualifying tools for use in assessing the safety, effectiveness, or performance of a medical device subject to regulation by CDRH. CDRH believes the use of qualified tools will reduce regulatory burden when evaluating medical devices. It may also facilitate the development and timely evaluation of medical devices by providing a more efficient and predictable means for collecting the necessary information to support regulatory submissions and associated decision-making. For the purpose of this presentation, a submitter is any person, group, consortia, or organization, including the federal government, that takes responsibility for and initiates the MDDT qualification process using the procedures described in the MDDT guidance. The MDDT program benefits numerous stakeholders in the medical device ecosystem. Qualification can help to bridge the gap between research and development of medical devices and the delivery of high-quality, safe, and effective devices to patients. Particularly beneficial is that a qualified MDDT can be used by multiple sponsors across multiple medical device development programs. Therefore, qualification reduces individual resource expenditure through collaboration in the non-competitive setting where multiple interested parties may work together and pool resources to expedite development, validation, and use of an MDDT. When MDDTs are used in pre-market applications, CDRH intends to accept the results of a qualified MDDT without reconfirming the suitability or utility of the tool. This is likely to minimize uncertainty in the review process and increase overall efficiency of the review. Finally, it's important to note that qualified patient-reported outcomes are a great way to capture the voice of patients in support of your pre-market application. In the previous slide, I mentioned that an MDDT can be used to capture patient voices. So let's talk about exactly what an MDDT is. CDRH defines an MDDT as a method, material, or measurement used to assess the safety, effectiveness, or performance of a medical device. It is scientifically substantiated and can be qualified for use in device evaluation and to support regulatory decision-making. There are a breadth of tools that are appropriate for the MDDT qualification pathway. We at CDRH recognize that broadly the examples shown on this slide are the most common types of MDDTs received by the program and outlined in the guidance. These major examples of MDDTs are distinguished primarily by how the tool measures the relevant parameters. For example, non-clinical assessment models can be computational models, phantoms, or other models and methodologies that may inform device safety, effectiveness, or performance. Another category of tools is biomarker tests. For example, tools that measure molecular, histologic, radiographic, or physiological characteristics. The third category is clinical outcome assessments that may assess symptoms and severity of a disease or illness. Finally, we acknowledge with the growing interest in digital health technologies, a tool may not strictly fall into any of the aforementioned three categories, and therefore we have a category of other to capture unique tool types such as datasets and reference materials. The overall categorization is only intended to serve as a guide or example. Any tool that assesses the safety, effectiveness, or performance of a medical device may be submitted to the MDDT program for qualification. So let's shift gears and talk about how to submit a tool through the MDDT qualification pathway. The MDDT qualification pathway has two phases. The first is the proposal phase, and during this phase, the agency reviews the proposal from the submitter to determine suitability and provide feedback on the overall qualification plan. If a proposal is suitable and the qualification plan is sound, the tool will be accepted into the MDDT program. The next phase is the qualification phase. Here, the agency reviews the evidence provided based on the agreed upon qualification plan to determine if it supports the proposed context of use. If so, the tool will be qualified, and if not, the agency may recommend changes to the context of use or may determine not to qualify the tool. Please note that the agency only intends to qualify tools where some high-level information about the existence of the tool and its utility can be made public. The first step for anyone interested in qualifying an MDDT is to submit a proposal. However, interested submitters may always reach out to the program via the MDDT email inbox with questions or to discuss your tool prior to sending in a submission. In the next couple of slides, I'll discuss the key content to include in the proposal and qualification phases. In the proposal phase submission, we expect to see the information listed on this slide. It's important to provide a thorough description of the tool. The description you provide will depend on the type of tool, scientific principle, and how the output is achieved. Next, the proposed context of use statement. We expect the context of use statement to be concise and include only key information that allows the tool user to quickly understand how the tool can be used to support assessments of safety, effectiveness, or device performance. Following the COU statement, the proposal should also include the performance criteria and qualification plan. The performance criteria are important to describe the overall performance characteristics of your tool. Finally, the qualification plan should include what evidence the submitter intends to collect to support the tool, as well as how the evidence will be collected. It's important to point out that during the proposal phase, submissions would not typically include data to support qualification, and acceptance into the program is based on the overall regulatory utility of the tool. We don't expect the submitter to have sufficient data to support qualification at the time of proposal. After we make a decision to accept the proposal into the program, we may also provide any necessary feedback or considerations that the submitter should address in order to proceed to the qualification phase. If the proposal is not accepted into the program, we do intend to provide the factors contributing to this decision to the submitter, and we intend to make a proposal decision within approximately 90 days of receipt of a complete proposal phase submission. After you're invited to the qualification phase, we would expect to see the content summarized on this slide. A qualification package should include the full proposal along with the tool evidence, which may include test reports, a discussion of the strength of evidence and how it supports qualification, and an assessment of the advantages and disadvantages of the tool used. CDRH will review the evidence to determine if the tool can be qualified for the specified context of use. We intend to qualify the MDDT if the tool is adequately described, the proposed context of use is appropriately defined, the strength of evidence supports use of the MDDT within the proposed context of use, and the probable advantages of using a tool outweigh the probable limitations for that proposed context. Once we've determined whether or not to qualify a tool, we intend to notify the submitter in writing of the decision. Qualified tools will also be publicly announced. When CDRH qualifies a tool, we intend to publicly disclose a summary of evidence and basis of qualification, or SEBQ. This document includes a brief description of the tool and its principle of operation, the qualified context of use statement, a general summary of the evidence to support qualification and discussion of the strength of that evidence, a brief assessment of the advantages and limitations of using the MDDT for the qualified context of use, and information on how a device developer can contact a tool developer to access the tool. To briefly reiterate, a tool developer can be an individual, entity, device manufacturer, consortia, or group. The submission process is completely voluntary and there are no fees. The agency also does not make a decision about your tool known unless it is qualified. If you are interested in submitting an MDDT proposal to the program, please visit our MDDT webpage for the instructions to submit an e-copy online or by mail. If you have any questions, make sure you email the MDDT inbox at mddt@fda.hhs.gov. Now that you know how to submit a tool to the program, let's talk a little bit about the tools that have been qualified. Till date, we've qualified 17 MDDTs that span a number of different product areas and tool types. Through a recent survey of our CDRH document repositories, we noted that there have been over 1,000 unique pre-market submissions that have cited qualified MDDTs, and we're excited to expand the number of tools that we've qualified through the program, as well as encourage use of these tools whenever possible. So what are these tools? Here's the breakdown of our currently qualified tools. There are 7 clinical outcome assessments, all of which happen to be patient-reported outcome measures. And these tools range from instruments for aesthetic outcomes to instruments assessing adverse events from ophthalmic interventions and assessments of quality of life. There are 2 tools categorized as biomarker tests, one of which includes wearable technology to assess conditions within the context of a clinical trial. 1 tool under the category of Other, which is our first database to be qualified under the MDDT program, and 7 non-clinical assessment methods ranging from material characterization methodology, MRI safety assessment, and phantoms. When considering your device design and evaluation, we strongly urge you to take a look at the MDDT webpage and evaluate if these qualified tools can be used to support your regulatory pre-market application. To summarize, the MDDT program is CDRH's voluntary pathway to qualify regulatory science tools. MDDTs are tools that are intended to assess safety, effectiveness, or performance of a medical device. And finally, device manufacturers are encouraged to consider the use of MDDTs in support of their pre-market application. Thank you for your attention to my presentation. I hope that you know a little bit more about the MDDT program and how it can benefit you within the world of medical device development. I'll be available for questions after our next presenter, Danielle Thao.